So we're gonna talk about investment banker today. I've had this book in my hands for months. I've been taking lots of notes. I've been reading back and forth. I loved it. It's one of the best books I've read. Super exciting. But before we get into the questions, I actually want to know your opinion, because you've written a lot of books in your life. And I want to know exactly how you feel about investment banker and like how much justice it does to the real experience.
Irene, anything you want to discuss. I'm your fan, so anything you want.
Awesome. So would you say it's one of your favorite books that you've written, Investment Banker?
Well, since it was my first book, and I guess people think that their first everything is the best. Yes, I certainly have very, very fond memories of it. Whether it's my best or not, I have no way to know, but it was my first, and I loved every minute. I loved every minute of the trip, and then I loved every minute of writing it down.
Yes, and because I see in the appendix that you were taking notes every single day. And so I guess the process when you came back, it was easy because you had notes all around the entire trip, the 22 months.
Well, basically the real notes I had were I used to write my parents postcards from at least every country because I wanted them to know I was alive, and it would give them some idea of what I was doing. But also, it would be a journal for me. So when I got back, I had all these postcards that gave me some notes about what happened.
Okay. So at the beginning of the book, you talk about your childhood, your studies, scholarships, how you fell in love with the markets, with Dominic and Dominic. And there is something that really resonated with me, which is that in 1968, you entered the markets with $600 and that you exited them in 1980. Well, not really exited, but with more money than you thought existed. So my question is, well, how did that feel? And if someone was to be in the same situation as you were in 2021, how difficult do you think it would be for someone to have the same results?
Well, in 1968, for me, $600 was a lot of money. I came from a very poor place, a poor background. We didn't have much money. Money was hard to get. And so, yes, when I retired in 1980, it was a lot of money for me. But now people make that much in a day, Irene. It's not so much money these days compared to what people are making on Wall Street and in investing. But for me, it was a lot of money. And my main interest was I wanted adventure. I wanted to see the world, and I wanted to have more than one life. So I quit.
Amazing. Well, you did and you didn't, right? Because you've continued investing over the years.
Oh, yes. No. I have to invest. I have to pay my bills. But at the time, I wanted to do, I didn't want to have to go to an office every day or be responsible for other people. When you invest money for other people, it's a big responsibility. You have to worry about it. If I lose money for myself or my family, it's not good, but it's okay. But if I lose money for other people, that's a big responsibility. And I didn't want that anymore. I wanted adventure.
Of course. And you did.
Yes.
When I got in touch for this interview, I was flying to Vienna. I said that, I was flying to the Sleeping Beauty, as you called it. And you said you multiplied by 5 the investments that you did in that country. Is there today any example that it's similar? Like, is there any other culture that it's going through the same changes?
As Austria, as Vienna?
Yes.
Well,
so that I know and I can invest in it.
Well, in 2021, yes, people know about Austria. And in those days, the Austrian stock market was very, very, very small and very quiet. And not many people in Austria knew about it. These days, as I look around the world, there are new places like Uzbekistan.
Mhm.
There's some countries in Africa that are opening up where things are changes. There are different countries now. I just bought a few shares in Korea today. Korea is not a new market, obviously, but it is down a lot. So there are places where I hope there are opportunities to invest and to make some money. And I do like to find places that are obscure or where people are not doing very much. Namibia in Africa. I mean, most people couldn't find Namibia on a map, but I am starting to invest a small way in Namibia.
In Namibia, okay.
It's
Um,
in Southwest Africa.
I've seen it from the book, from the whole trip.
Well, maybe we will have dinner in Namibia someday.
So one of the first stops of your trip in Investment Biker, in the first world trip, you actually went to Austria, and they were quite disappointed about the speech that you gave. And one sentence was something along the lines of, trees don't grow to the sky, stock markets don't go up forever, and high prices cut demand. Is there any situation in the market right now where you can apply that? The stock market is over the roof for many shares, cryptocurrencies.
Well, Irene, as you know, most stock markets around the world, or these major stock markets, have gone up a lot. The United States stock market is near its all-time high, but that's true of several countries. And I don't like normally to buy things when they're at an all-time high. So it is difficult to find, for me, it is difficult to find shares to buy now because everything is so expensive. I mean, around the world, many stocks are becoming a bubble. Mm-hmm. Amazon goes up every day. 10 cent goes up every day. Samsung goes up every day. Not all stocks. If you look at bonds around the world, bonds are definitely in a bubble. Bonds have never been this expensive in the history of the world. Never have interest rates been so low worldwide. If you look at property in some countries, I mean, if you go to New Zealand or Korea or some places, property is becoming a bubble. So most assets are very expensive now. The cheapest assets are commodities. I mean, silver is down 60% from its all-time high. Sugar is down a lot from its all-time high. These are not bubble kind of numbers. So the cheapest asset classes that I know now in 2021 are commodities. And some countries, I mentioned Namibia, I mentioned Uzbekistan, but most countries are expensive.
Yeah, and especially you mentioned property. Even during the trip, when you were in old Turkestan, you said that you were not attracted to buying land because you wanted something that you could buy and sell quickly. So I guess today, even worse, if you're saying that we're in quite a big bubble.
Well, and yes, and I don't know if it means there's something wrong with me or not, but many of my friends make a lot of money in property and they don't mind buying property, which they have to hold. They cannot sell, even if they want to. Certainly cannot sell fast if they want to. But I like to think that I can sell things that I own. And I don't know where that comes from. But all my life, I've wanted the feeling that I could sell if I had to.
Yeah, and it's worked out really well. So I'm sure it's a wise decision.
Well, so far I'm okay. So far I'm surviving.
Of course. You were planning the trip for 10 years, which I think it's incredible because you needed to get permissions to cross over Siberia, China. That requires so much persistence and drive to keep 10 years. Do you think that's a trait that makes you such a good investor?
Well, patience and persistence is certainly important if you're in just about anything, especially in investing. I have 2 daughters now, and I try to teach them persevere, persevere, persevere. That's probably the most important word I want to teach them. Never give up. If there's something you're trying to do, just do not give up. The people who are successful in life are the crazy people who never give up. They just persevere. And I guess I was crazy. I very much wanted to go around the world. It did not seem to be right unless I went across the Soviet Union, unless I went across China, which was impossible. But I kept trying, and finally I did it.
Mhm. Now, as I was reading the book, I felt like in every single chapter, something will happen and you would have to stop it. You were going through so many storms and problems with authorities. It feels like fiction, but how did you make it to the end?
Well, you're exactly right, and you're very observant. If you drive around the world, it's not so easy, it turns out. Most people who even try it never make it. They give up, or they have problems. But it was, I would guess I was crazy. It's something I wanted to do, and I was single-minded, and well, always problems, always problems. We were held hostage in Africa for 9 days once, etc. But somehow or another, by persevering and by never giving up, I made it, and I'm still alive.
It's unbelievable. When you went to Asia on the first part of the trip, you said that you were amazed at the productivity that you could see in China, and that's why you were then so attracted to this market. And well, you live in Singapore, so I guess that remains the same. No, I was just going to say, like, what other cultures from all the world from the trip do you think can be in a similar position?
Well, certainly in those days, China was still pretty much unknown as far as a new country, a developing country. Now, of course, everybody knows what has happened in China, but I could see the huge changes taking place in China. And so I wanted to invest and I wanted to get involved. I live in Singapore now, but I live here so that my children would learn Chinese and would know Asia. I figured that the most important thing I can give them is to know Asia and to speak Chinese. And they do. They can speak good Chinese and they know Asia now. So that part has worked. In their lifetime, Asia is going to be extremely important, and China too. So that's why I'm here. I saw that as I was going. But I mean, when in those days, Soviet Union and Russia, I was very, very negative about the Russia, Soviet Union, and I was for many years. I was negative on the Soviet Union for decades. Now I'm optimistic. I have investments in the Soviet Union, in Russia, on the Russian stock exchange. I think I see positive changes taking place there after many decades. So I've invested there. That's a big change. There are places where I see change. Korea is going to, once they open the border to the north, Korea is going to be very exciting. I'm buying a few shares in Korea today, as a matter of fact. So there are places where there are changes taking place, and I hope that I can find more. I mean, I know you speak Spanish. A country, Venezuela, is a disaster right now. I went to Venezuela, and it's a real disaster, but I cannot invest there because I'm an American and there are sanctions. But I have learned in my life and in history that if you invest in a country which is a catastrophe, normally a few years later, you're very excited and happy you did. I would like to invest in Venezuela right now, but as I say, I cannot. But it is a catastrophe.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and is Spain an attractive investment? Probably not. But have you seen any companies that you think are interesting at this stage?
Well, I haven't really looked at Spain recently for some reason. I have invested in Spain at times in my life. At the moment, no, and I guess it's just because I'm lazy. I haven't looked. I should ask you, should I be investing in Spain in 2021 or not? Or is it like most markets have gone up a lot? Is Spain up a lot?
If you look at the IBEX, it's usually a really sad story. So I'd love to say yes, there are some particular companies, but generally there are a lot of changes that need to happen in my country for it to be a really interesting investment.
Well, I like to find places that are a disaster or where there are really exciting changes taking place, like in Uzbekistan or Namibia or some countries around the world. That's the way. I don't like to buy things that are already expensive or they're going up and that everybody knows about. I certainly love Spain. I have had such wonderful memories of my times in Spain, going back decades now. It's certainly changed a lot since when I first went there. They still had Franco.
Oh,
You don't remember Franco. You're not old enough, but you read about Franco.
My family does.
Well, Franco was there when I was there the first time. It was that long ago. So Spain has changed a lot in my lifetime.
Yeah, I'd say now with the pandemic, because you can work remotely from anywhere around the world, a lot of companies are moving to Spain. A lot of the workforce, the people are coming back. So that's where I see some positive change. But there are a lot of things within the structure, within the government that still need to change.
Well, then I should keep a closer eye on Spain, or I should listen to Irene to know what's happening so that I can decide when to invest in Spain and what to invest in. But it's certainly, I've always had fun in Spain, even when Franco was there.
Going back to the topic of Asia and related to Africa, you said on the book that Africa needed to go through a similar change as Thailand did, for example. You were quite disappointed when you were in Africa because of everything that happened, the structure. I'm quite disappointed to see that many years after, things haven't changed that much. So what's the change that they need?
Africa has been making changes since then. In many places, it's positive change. I do have investments in Africa, in Ghana, Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is a disaster. I invested a little bit in Zimbabwe recently. But boy, one time Zimbabwe was one of the richest countries in the British Empire. Now it's probably the poorest country in the British Empire, or former British Empire. Mugabe destroyed it, but I have started making a few small investments in Zimbabwe. Some African countries are making positive changes, and I'm always on the lookout, hoping to find positive changes anywhere. And it's certainly got great promise. It has huge assets and a lot of hardworking people. So if you have any suggestions, you tell me. As I say, I will start listening to Irene to find out where to invest.
I'll need to do a lot of research in the African market then. And so, South America, you mentioned Venezuela, but from any other parts of your trip, like, do you still find any countries that are attractive?
Well, yes. I right now, Colombia, Colombia went through a long civil war, decades-long civil war. It seems to be have come to an end. Marijuana, a lot of the war was about drugs. It was a drug capital. But now marijuana is legal in many countries, and it's legal in marijuana. It's legal in the United States, and it's becoming legal in more and more countries. And Colombia has lots of resources and lots of smart people. So Colombia is a place that I'm interested in now. I have some small investments in Colombia, looking for more. Peru, there may be opportunities in Peru at the moment. Argentina, I hope Argentina, I mean, Argentina is a wonderful country, but it is never really, I mean, it has not often had good politicians, good management. But if you can ever find a good change in Argentina, that could be great. There are certainly some interesting countries, lots of natural resources in South America, and plenty of smart people.
I'll have to do more
But you
research.
should do, listen, Irene, you should watch Irene. You should watch Irene. She knows Spanish. She can be the best place for investing in South America.
Another question from the trip that I'm interested is around the sources that you go to when you want to get news. So you used to read to the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Financial Times. Do you still follow today similar sources? And how real, how clear are they? And are they manipulated? Like, well, all media sites are manipulated somehow, but which ones are the least?
All media is manipulated somehow, except Irene.
Of course.
But I still read the Financial Times, the Wall Street Journal, of course, yes. But in 2021, the internet, there was no internet back in those days, or there was basically no internet, no real internet. It was just starting. Now I can turn on the internet and, in those days, nobody could find Uzbekistan. Now I can go online and find out a lot about Uzbekistan or any place in the world. That is a huge change. Now, just because you get facts, Irene, does not mean you should act. You need judgment, and 100 people could go into a room and they could all hear the same facts. Only a few of them would get the right judgment. Judgment, unfortunately, is very hard. So we do all have many, many, many more facts now and more knowledge now than we used to. But still, judgment is the hard part, and I make as many mistakes as other people. So facts, it takes more than facts to make good judgment.
Yes, and I guess the more sources you go to, the better, because then you can compare and you can form your own opinion.
Yes, I used to read newspapers from 4 or 5, 6 countries every day, and each one of them thought that they were right. Every country said, this is the answer. Well, they couldn't all be right. And so what you'd have to do is you put them all in your brain, stir them around, and hopefully you come out with the right answer. That's still the case. You get a lot more facts faster now. We have more knowledge, but you still have to come up with the right judgment.
Exactly. At the end of the trip, you say that you fulfilled your dream. It was 22 months of really extreme experiences, knowledge, getting to know a lot of people around the world. After doing such a big trip, what can excite you after?
Well, as I was doing that trip, people kept telling me you're going to get killed. And I remember thinking, I hope I don't get killed, but at least I will die happy. I will die what I want to do, my dream. I could get killed walking down the street in New York. I could get hit by a bus, or I could get killed driving around the world on my motorcycle. I didn't get killed. I'm very, very happy to be alive. But that's what I wanted to do. But it was so much fun and so excited. I wanted to do it again. So as you know, 10 years later, I did it again, only this time in a car, a longer trip, and to see more of the world. Because I guess, one of my passions is the world and what's happening in the world and adventure. So nothing I had rather do than know about what's happening in the world. I can tell you very, very little about football. I can tell you nothing about football, but if it comes to I mean, football is a wonderful game. And whenever I see a good football match, I love it, but I
It's not
couldn't
your
tell you
passion.
anything. There are other things that I would prefer to do. And if you said to me, oh, let's go to Namibia, I would say, yes, let's go. If you said, let's go to North Korea, I would say, yes, let's go. I cannot go to North Korea now. I'm American, but boy, that's the sort of thing that excites me much more than reading about football.
And so how have you felt with this whole pandemic for 2 years?
Well, I'm like everybody else. It's a terrible tragedy. A lot of people have died, unfortunately. A lot of people have gotten very sick. So far, it's certainly, have been able to travel very, very little. Nobody's been able to travel very much. And so that, of course, I don't like. And I have missed a lot of things. And I certainly am sorry about the epidemic because of the sickness, the illness, the deaths, and it's closed a lot of places down. Singapore, where I live, is really pretty much has been halfway closed or partially closed for a long time. So it has not been good for the world. I don't know if governments have been making the right decisions or not. We will know in a few years, but it has certainly not been good for the world.
Of course. And in the middle of a pandemic, well, after the pandemic, you keep talking about a market crash, which you say that it's going to be the worst in your lifetime. That you don't know when it's going to happen, but whenever it does, because of the amount of debt, it's going to be awful. It's going to be the worst. How can we get ready for it, Jim?
Well, I don't think the pandemic is what's causing that. Although the pandemic has certainly hurt a lot of things. The stock, I'll use America, since it's the largest stock market, it is at an all-time high. The American stock market has been going up for 12 years or something. That's the longest in American history. It has never, ever gone up that many years in a row in the US. So things are very, very expensive, very, very high. In 2008 in the world, we had a big problem because of too much debt. The debt was very high, and so the world suffered. Irene, since 2008, the debt has gone up huge amount. Even China has debt now. So the next time we have a bear market, and we've always had bear markets, and we always will. My only point is the next time we have a bear market is going to be the worst in my lifetime because the debt is so very, very, very high. Now, I would love for somebody to tell me, oh, don't worry. Well, I have learned, I know the world has always had economic problems every few years. I know we will have them again, and I know that the debt is very, very high now. So I am worried.
And you've made me worried. Like I keep talking to my colleagues who invest, listen to Jim Rogers. This is what he's saying, be careful. But they don't know when it's going to happen.
Well, if you know what you're doing, I'm sure you'll come through it okay. And if you know what's going on, if you're knowledgeable, and if you become knowledgeable, you become worried, and then you become prepared. And if you are prepared and you know what's happening, Irene, in the 1930s, in the Great Depression, there were a lot of people that came out of the Great Depression rich and successful. Not many, but there were some. So there will always be people who understand and can make money in bad times. I hope that you and your viewers will also make money. Hope I will survive. I hope we all survive.
I hope that too. So in order to survive, apart from, investing in commodities, which is what you usually advise, is there any other areas that you would suggest?
Well, I don't always invest in commodities, but certainly now I think that commodities are the cheapest asset class in the world. But as I look around the world, some industries have been decimated. I mean, tourism and travel has been a nightmare, as you know, in many countries in the world. So there may be opportunities there. I have bought some airlines. I bought some shipping companies because they were hurt so badly in the pandemic. Anything to do with entertainment, travel, tourism, transportation, there may be opportunities there. So if I can find opportunities where things have been damaged, then I try to invest.
Mm-hmm. And are there any names you can provide of these companies?
Well, the problem, Irene, I know you have to ask and you should ask, but I don't like to give names too often, because if I give names, then people buy them and they often don't know what they're doing. Yeah. And that is not good. It's not good for people to buy things they don't understand and they don't know themselves. Yes, I'm buying a tourism company in Korea called Ananti. I'm buying it today, but that doesn't mean it's a good investment just because I buy it. I make many mistakes. So people should only invest in what they themselves know a lot about. The most important investment advice I can give anybody is only invest in what you yourself know a lot about. Maybe you can listen to Irene, but you should not listen to most people. You should only stay with what you know if you want to be successful. And people will say, that's boring. Okay, if you want to be successful, be boring. Stay with what you know, and that's how you will be successful. I mean, I can certainly tell you about Russian shipping companies or Chinese wine companies. But if you don't know about Chinese wine companies, please do not invest in Chinese wine companies or anything else unless you know about it.
Yeah, definitely. And also on that note, some people think they know a lot about cryptocurrencies, for example, and then that's why they're fully invested, and it's more like a religion where they just believe and they put everything in it. So I guess also they need to be careful and diversify.
Well, that's a very good point, and I have noticed that there are many people in cryptocurrency. It is a religion. I mean, it's a mania for many people, and I cannot. Maybe they all know a lot more than the rest of us, but many of the people, I've seen manias before, I've seen bubbles before, and you see many people not questioning anything, just saying you must buy, you don't understand. Well, maybe, but those kinds of things have happened before in world history, and usually they end badly. By the way, we're all going to have money on the computer. In China already, you cannot take a taxi with money. You have to have your computer money. You cannot buy ice cream in China with money. You have to have it on the computer. That's going to be the case everywhere in the world soon. But in my view, it's going to be government money. I don't think most government, when the U.S., and I'll use the U.S., when the U.S. says, okay, this is money now. If you want to spend money, you must use your computer money. But I don't think the U.S. government's going to say, okay, this is money. But if you want to use their money, you can use their money. Most governments are not like that. They want power, they want control, they want monopoly. So,
yeah, that would be a dream.
Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about.
Okay, I don't want to steal more of your precious time. So I just want to ask as a final question, like what should be the next book I should be reading from you, Jim?
Well, that's a good question. My second book was about another trip around the world, 3 years instead of 2 years, many more countries. It was 10 years later, so obviously there were some things that had changed. That was called Adventure Capitalist, and I certainly loved that book a lot. But I'll let you decide. You're a very smart person. I remember the first time I met you, how impressed I was. So you decide. You tell people what they should read. I've had a couple of bestsellers in Japan recently in Japanese. but talking about the problems in Japan. But most people don't care or know enough about Japan to read those kind of books. And they're in Japanese anyway, because they're about Japan. So, I mean, who knows? You tell me, I listen to you.
I'll tell you which one I'll pick.
Well, and I guess I had a book called Street Smarts, which was a bit of a story of my life and some other things, a lot about the world. That was one I liked too. What you should do is ask Irene, okay?
You made that very clear.
I always had great admiration for Irene, so ask Irene.
How come, Jim? I do for you. I'm your one top fan. I've been following all your interviews, all your appearances, your book. So it's a pleasure to be talking to you today.
Well, it is certainly my delight. It has been a long time since I've seen you, and I hope it's not nearly so long in the future. Let's do it again sometime, okay?
Thank you very much, Jim.
Oh, thank you. And I certainly love Spain.
And I'll see you in Namibia, right? If you want to go to Namibia,
Okay.
I'll go with you.
See, in Namibia or Spain or Uzbekistan, there are many places where we can meet. Terrific.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.